Something is already afoot, but most people haven't yet noticed. The oceans are slowly warming. Weather patterns are beginning to behave differently. Just subtle at first, but certainly not random. Our scientists are quietly warning that the dreaded El Niño may be arriving sooner for us than expected. But they're not going to shout this from the rooftops. This isn't just another cycle of the weather. What's to come could affect droughts, floods, and food supply, even our entire economies. Stick with us until the end, and you'll understand why many experts believe it's already too late and will likely impact on our location, the food we have access to, and the stability of the world going forward. If you're keen to learn more real science about deep space and the potential future of the planet, hit the subscribe button because what we're about to discuss could affect us all. First things first, we must understand what El Niño really is, beginning with the Pacific Ocean. During normal conditions, powerful trade winds push warm water across the ocean toward Asia. This keeps the Western Pacific warm and the Eastern Pacific near South America relatively cool. But during El Niño, those winds weaken, sometimes collapsing altogether. And when that happens, something massive begins to shift. Warm water that's usually locked away in the Western Pacific starts moving back toward the east. It spreads across thousands of kilometers, releasing heat into the atmosphere. And that heat doesn't stay local. It moves. It reshapes the jet stream. It disrupts storm systems. It changes where rain falls and where it doesn't. Suddenly, regions that depend on stable, predictable weather patterns lose that stability. And that's when the real effects begin. These aren't mere anomalies, but instead are part of a larger pattern. Changes such as rainfall timing and temperature fluctuations are garnering close attention. To scientists, this rings the early alarm bells of a shifting system versus isolated extremes. Now here's where things start to get more concerning. El Niño isn't new. It's part of a natural cycle that's been happening for thousands of years. But this time, the conditions are different, because the oceans it's forming in are already warmer than usual. Global ocean temperatures have been rising steadily, storing enormous amounts of heat beneath the surface. So when an El Niño forms on top of that, it's not starting from normal conditions. It's starting from an already elevated baseline, which means the effects don't just repeat, they amplify. And that's why scientists are paying much closer attention this time. Because what used to be a moderate shift in weather patterns could now trigger something much more extreme. Droughts that last longer, storms that hit harder, heat waves that push beyond what many regions are used to handling, and in some places, a complete reversal of what people have always expected from their climate. Parts of Australia, for example, often face increased drought risk during El Niño periods. Less rainfall, drier soil, higher fire danger. Meanwhile, other parts of the world experience the opposite. South America can see intense rainfall and flooding. The United States can experience unusual winter patterns. Asia can face disrupted monsoons. It's not just one type of weather event. It's a global rebalancing, and not always a stable one. And for most people, this is where it stops feeling like a distant climate event. It starts showing up in small, almost unnoticeable ways. A grocery bill that's just slightly higher than usual. Certain foods becoming increasingly harder to find. Energy prices shifting without a clear reason. Nothing dramatic at first. Just subtle changes that don't seem connected. Though over time, those small shifts begin to stack. And what once felt like isolated issues starts to reveal a much larger pattern subtly unfolding in the background. Now here's the part most people don't realize. These changes don't just affect the weather. They affect systems we rely on every single day. Agriculture is one of the first to feel it. Crops depend on timing, rain arriving when it's expected, temperatures staying within certain ranges. But when those patterns shift, even slightly, yields can drop. Harvests can fail. And when that happens across multiple regions at the same time, it doesn't stay local. It affects global food supply. Prices rise, availability tightens, And suddenly something that started as an ocean temperature shift begins showing up in everyday life. Then there's water. Reservoirs depend on consistent rainfall cycles. Snowpack in some regions acts as natural storage, slowly releasing water over time. But during El Niño, those systems can become unpredictable. Too little rain in one place, too much in another. And infrastructure isn't always designed for that kind of variability. Now layer onto that something even more complex: energy. Hydropower depends on water flow. Cooling systems for power plants depend on stable temperatures. Even energy demand itself changes. More heat waves mean higher demand for cooling. So what you start to see is a chain reaction. Weather shifts, which affect resources, which affect systems, which affect economies. And it all traces back to something happening quietly in the Pacific Ocean. This is where things take a more unsettling turn. Some climate models suggest that El Niño events may be becoming more intense over time. Not necessarily more frequent, but stronger, more extreme, more disruptive. And if that trend continues, it changes the question from when will the next El Niño happen to something much more serious. How prepared are we for the version of El Niño we're about to face? Because preparation isn't just about knowing it's coming. It's about whether systems are built to handle it, and in many cases, they're not. Urban areas aren't always designed for sudden flooding. Agricultural systems aren't always flexible enough to adapt quickly. Emergency responses can be reactive rather than proactive. And that creates a gap between what's coming and how ready we actually are. Now remember what we mentioned at the beginning, that this may be arriving sooner than expected. Recent ocean data has shown warming patterns developing in ways that resemble the early stages of El Niño. Subtle at first, but accelerating. And that's what has scientists paying attention. Because when these patterns begin earlier than predicted, it compresses the timeline for preparation. Less time to adapt, less time to respond, and more pressure on systems that are already stretched. So the question becomes, is it already too late to prepare? The honest answer is, not completely, but also not comfortably early. Some preparation is still possible. Water management strategies can be adjusted. Agricultural planning can shift in anticipation. Emergency systems can be strengthened. But large-scale changes, infrastructure upgrades, long-term planning, global coordination, those take time. And time is exactly what becomes limited when these events arrive faster than expected. Which leads to the deeper reality behind all of this. El Niño itself isn't the problem. It's the interaction between El Niño and the world we've built around predictable patterns. We've designed cities, food systems, and economies based on stability, consistency, expectations that tomorrow will look similar to yesterday. But El Niño disrupts that assumption. And when that disruption becomes stronger, it exposes weaknesses that were always there, just hidden under stable conditions. And this is where the final piece comes in. The part that most people don't hear about. El Niño doesn't act alone. It interacts with other global systems, long-term warming trends, ocean heat content, changer in atmosphere. So when it arrives, it doesn't reset the system. It layers on top of everything already happening, which means each new El Niño has the potential to push conditions into territory we haven't experienced before. Not just warmer, not just wetter or drier, but less predictable, more volatile, and harder to model, and that uncertainty is what makes it so powerful. Because it's not just about what we know will happen, it's about what we can't fully predict. And that's why this matters. Because the next El Niño won't just be a repeat of the last one. It will be shaped by a world that's already changed. The response around it is the real major question here, not just how strong it will be when it comes. So, when you hear that El Niño is coming sooner than expected, it's not just a headline, it's a signal that something beneath the surface is already moving, already building, By the time most people notice, not only will it just be beginning, it'll already be too late to stop.